Hello, guys. Today we're going to talk about indirect money making facilities, which are the toilets, parking, and the floodlights. I talked about them already in previous videos. Most of the things I said there will not be repeated here. So if you didn't watch those videos, you should check them out. The playlist with all of them is going to be here in the cards for you now. We are going to do a lot of maths here. If you don't like maths, you may have a bit of a headache. But don't worry, later in the video I will show you a much easier and more direct way to solve this problem. However, I must give you some theoretical explanation first for you to understand what we are doing here. As you know, the indirect money making facilities don't give you money directly. That's why I call them indirect. The only thing they do is to increase your attendance, which will make your money making facilities produce more revenue. Our goal here will be to define whether you should upgrade the indirect money making facilities or not, based on your team, on the features of your team. I will go to Microsoft Word now, where I can properly set and organize the problem for you. To start the analysis, we need to define some variables, which are the fund base, which corresponds to the number of supporters you have at the moment, the expected attendance, which I will show you how to calculate very soon, your stadium size, and the real attendance. I'm defining these variables so that I don't need to repeat these big names all the time. Then I will use these variables. We have a couple more variables we need to define related to the money making facilities. Okay, they will show us the revenue we make from each facility. They are the fast food joints, represented by FF, merchandise stand, represented by this, restaurant, sausage stand, and the stadium. Here in the stadium is how much each supporter pays per ticket. Okay. Then we have the total revenue we make per supporter, which is this variable, and the total revenue we make per match. Okay. Now let's see how to calculate some of these variables. First, we have here the expected attendance, which is the fan base times 2.5. This 2.5 here could be 2.4 if you want to be more conservative, 2.3 if you want to be more aggressive, 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. This is the amount of supporters you expect to attend to your matches, okay? We usually use this 2.5 rule, but you can use different ones, as this is just an estimation, nothing exact. I thought about them before, so I will not explain much here. If you want to know more about, check the videos I mentioned in the playlist before. Okay, so this is how we calculate the expected attendance. Then we have the real attendance, which will be the minimum between the expected attendance and your stadium size. Because imagine that your expected attendance is 12,000 people, but your stadium has only 10,000 seats. Naturally, we cannot fit more than 10,000 people. Then your real attendance for the match will be 10,000 people at most. Okay, this is why I have this variable, real attendance. Then there are these other two that I presented here. First, the total revenue per supporter, which is simply the sum of the revenue produced by each facility. You will recall that we have 5 money-making facilities, but here I put only 4, because the merchandise store, it doesn't give you money during matches. It only gives money in the beginning of the week, during the economy update. That's why I did not include the merchandise store here. But I added the stadium, which is the money you get from each ticket you sell. Here we have the total revenue, which is the real attendance we calculated here, multiplied by the total we make per supporter. Okay? I hope it's clear so far. This is the amount of money we make every match. Now I need to define some further variables about the indirect money-making facilities. They are the one variable for each facility, which are toilets, parking, and floodlights. And these variables, they refer to their effect. They will increase the attendance in 1%, 2%, 3%, depending on the level you have. And this is for their maintenance. Okay? And here I have the total effect, and on the next page, the total maintenance. Okay? I think it's easy to understand. And these totals, I just calculate by summing up the smaller amounts. Okay? Now I need just a few more variables that I will calculate based on these variables that I defined so far, which are the new attendance, new revenue per match, new real attendance, and difference in revenue. The new attendance should also be new expected attendance, which is the attendance you should have when you apply the effect of the indirect money making facilities on your expected attendance, which we calculated here. Okay, I have the equations for each one here. The new expected attendance you can calculate like this: you take the expected attendance you had at the beginning plus this attendance time the effect of the increase. For example, if you have toilets level 2 and parking level 2, you have 4% increase. So you have the expected attendance plus 4% of this expected attendance. Then again, you have to check the new real attendance because it doesn't matter how much your indirect money making facilities will increase the attendance if your stadium is small. So you still get the minimum. Let's say that your indirect facilities make your attendance be 15,000. If your stadium is just 10,000, your attendance will still be just 10,000. Okay? That's why I need this variable, new real attendance. Then I have the new revenue, which is this one, in which I multiply the new real attendance by the total generated by the money making facilities per supporter, which is what we saw before. This one. Okay. Then I obtain the new revenue. And finally, I calculate the difference in revenue, in which I subtract the new revenue from the previous revenue. Then I see how much money the indirect money making facilities are generating to me. Once more, if something is not clear, if you're getting lost, go back a bit and try to understand. Okay? Now, our last variable for the simulation, which will tell you how to know if the upgrade is profitable or not, which is this variable that I call PS, which is the profitable per season. Why does it have to be per season? This is because in some weeks we have one match, in other weeks we have two matches. This considers only home matches, okay? So sometimes we have two home matches, one home matches, or three, four if we are playing the cup or international competition. So we don't have a constant number of matches during the week. On the other hand, every week we pay maintenance only once, okay? Then if I want to compare revenue and maintenance, I need to make a comparison per season because during the season, I'm sure that I have 17 home league matches and 12 times that I have to pay for maintenance. Then I have two fixed amounts that I can work with. Understand? So the profit we can calculate like this: 17 home matches that I have times the difference in revenue generated, okay, minus 12, which is the number of weeks I have in a season, times the maintenance, which we calculated before here. Okay? I think it's not complicated. If you have questions, write down in the comments. So this is the profit that my indirect money making facilities generate per season. Okay? Finally, I check. If this profit is bigger than zero, then it's profitable. I can upgrade. If it's smaller than zero, then it's not profitable. I shouldn't upgrade yet. My club needs to develop other things before I can upgrade the indirect money making facilities. Okay? I hope the explanation was clear, even though there are lots of variables and equations, but I think it's not so complicated. But now, to make sure you understood, or to make it easier for you to understand, let's make some examples, a few examples. Have in mind that here I'm not considering cup matches, because they are not constant. Maybe you play one cup match in the season and it's even a away match, so I don't count them in this analysis. But yeah, if they happen, they will bring you more profit during the season. Here I only consider league matches. In the first example, I will consider a club which has a fan base of 6,800 supporters, a stadium size of 8,000 seats, and the money making facilities at level 0. Okay, this is the ticket price, which is always 200, so I already put it here. Then let's start. First, we calculate the expected attendance for this club, which is like this. We have the fan base, the 2.5 rule, we have 17,000. So this club is expected to have 17,000 supporters watching the game. However, the real attendance will be smaller because, as we saw, the stadium size is just 8,000. Then the real attendance will be 8,000, which because it's the minimum between these two values. Then we calculate the total revenue per supporter, okay, which is all zero here because the money making facilities are at level 0. We only have the 200 generated by each ticket sale. Once we have that, we can calculate the total revenue per match. 8,000 times 200, which gives us 1,600,000. Okay? Then we calculate the effect of the indirect money making facilities. Let's consider that this club is thinking about increasing toilets to level 1, parking to level 1, and don't do anything with floodlights. Okay, so the total effect will be 2%. And the total maintenance will be 10,000 plus 10,000, 20,000. Okay, these maintenances I got from the newbie guide. Later I will show you how to get there. I showed you before, but I'll show you again. After we have that, we can calculate the new expected attendance, which in this case should be 17,340 supporters. But once more, since the stadium is just 8,000 seats big, the new real attendance will be just 8,000, just as before. Okay. Since the new real attendance is the same as before, the total revenue per supporter will also be the same. The new revenue will still be the same, 1,600,000. Okay, no change. Then the difference when we take the new revenue minus the previous revenue will be zero because they were the same. Okay. Finally, we check the profit. We have 17 times the difference minus 12 times the maintenance of the indirect money making facilities. Okay, then we have 240,000 negative. Since the profit was smaller than zero, it's not profitable. So this club should not upgrade the indirect money making facilities to level 1. At least not now. Before, he should upgrade his stadium to a better size. Okay, then make this check again. Let me show you another example. Hopefully in this one we have some profitable situation. Let's see. Now I will still keep the fan base at the same size. The stadium I will increase. Now the stadium has 2,000 seats, 20,000 seats. And the money making facilities are at level 1. Okay? So let's make the calculations again. The expected attendance will be the same as the fan base is the same. But now the real attendance will increase. See, because now the stadium can fit all the supporters. Then my real attendance is 17,000. And for the total revenue per supporter will also increase because now I should consider the revenue from each facility at level 1. Okay? I check these numbers in the newbie guide and I put all of them here. This is the total we have. Then the total we generate per match is this times this, which gives us this 3,765,500. Now we consider the effect of the indirect money making facilities, which is like before 1%, 1%, 2%. The maintenance, the same, 20,000. And the new expected attendance, the same, 17,340. But now the real attendance will be this 17,340 because we increased the stadium. See? Then we calculate the next variable. This is the new revenue, which is going to be this amount. And when we calculate the difference, we see that now we have a positive revenue. Okay? A small one, That's true, but yeah, we have this positive difference. Now let's check the profit per season. We multiply by 17 the difference and subtract the maintenance. We have 1 million, around 1 million of profit, okay? Since it's bigger than zero, it's profitable. So, in this situation, the club should upgrade the indirect money making facilities to level 1. Toilets and parking. We didn't consider floodlights here. Good. Let's go to the final example, which I'm not going to solve, but just to give you something to think about. Just tell you how you could solve it. Should I increase further? Now this club saw that he could increase to level 1 because it's profitable, right? What if he wants to check for level 2? You would have to follow the same steps, but this time there will be a difference that your total revenue per match would be in relation to your current facilities, which means that you have toilets and parking level 1, okay? And you would calculate the new revenue for toilet and parking level 2. Then you calculate the difference and check if the profit per season will be positive or not, okay? So the current state you considered parking and toilets level 1, and for the next state, the upgrade that you are considering making in level 2. Understand? I will use these concepts explaining this video in my next video of the series about my Italian team, the journey. If you are not following the series yet, it's time to start. Check the playlist you see in the cards now. I told you that I was gonna show you how to get to the newbie guide and check the prices for revenue and maintenance. Let me do it. You come to the forum, then the international forum, at the general section. You see the newbie guide here. After you click in the list of posts, you go to post 10 about stadium facilities. And on the next page that you open, you look for post 9, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. No, not 9, post 10. Okay, then here you find the prices for, you find the revenue for each facility as I used. Okay, all the information you need about facilities you'll find here. Okay, yeah. As I promised, I had to show you in this video the easier and more direct way to calculate, to check whether you can or not upgrade your indirect money making facilities. But unfortunately, I think the video is too long already. Then I will let to show it to you on the next video. Okay, I do it using a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet that I created, but I'm going to present this spreadsheet on the next video. Okay, I'm sorry for that. I didn't think the explanation would take so long, but I think it was worth. I hope you guys could understand. And wait for my next video and I will show you the spreadsheet, which make things much faster. Okay, that's all for this video, guys. If you have questions, write them down below. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. See you soon.